In this day and age, when someone hears the name MS-13, they often picture bald, tattooed gang members being transported to the massive prisons in El Salvador. Most of them face lifelong sentences and will never see freedom again. The current president of El Salvador has implemented a policy called the Iron Fist against gangs, which has transformed the country from one of the most violent in the world to one of the safest. The former president of El Salvador was sentenced to 14 years in prison and fled to Nicaragua. Similarly, the former president of Honduras, Juan Hernández, was arrested by the US authorities for drug trafficking and weapon offenses. This shows how the drug trade can generate money that infiltrates the highest inner circles. But where does this all originate from? If you enjoy our content, like and subscribe to our channel or support us on conscioushistory.backme.org and dive with us back in time, before the mega prisons, the drug trade, the sentences, the mothers losing their sons and daughters, the sleepless nights, the families torn apart, and the lives lost. There is a history written in tattoos. When we go back to the early 80s, there was one ultimate enemy in the eyes of the Americans: communism. The US was providing support to various countries through weapons, training, and financial aid to prevent the spread of communism. One of these countries was El Salvador, where the government was engaged in a fierce battle against Marxist guerrilla groups. As in any war, it is often the everyday civilians who suffer the most severe consequences of the violence. People enduring deep trauma, children losing their parents, and the overwhelming sense that hope is slipping away. Seeking safety and a place to call home, many fled El Salvador in search of a refuge where they could find peace and security. Many Salvadorian refugees ended up in Los Angeles, California, where they experienced a culture shock. In rough and poor neighborhoods where they hoped to start a new life, youth groups formed to protect their beloved community. In this new home, many Salvadorians faced harassment from other groups in their neighborhoods and were bullied at schools for having a different Spanish dialect. In response, and with the desire to support their community, they came together to form a group called MSS, or Mara Salvatrucha Stoners. Mara meant group, Salvatrucha referred to Salvadorians, and Stoners was because they loved listening to rock music and smoking marijuana. They listened to bands like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, wore torn jeans and had long hair. They greeted each other with the rock symbol, not only because they loved the music, but also because it formed the letter M when reversed. If you harassed the MSS, they would stand up for each other and have each other's backs. They provided the support system they felt was missing from the government. This led to them making a name for themselves by fist-fighting other neighborhood groups on the streets. Because of the war, more and more Salvadorians fled their country, causing the neighborhood group to grow. The neighborhood fights became larger and eventually led to one outcome: jail time. In jail, things were a bit different than on the streets. Unlike the outside, people in jail were often divided by nationality. As a result, MS members had to ally with other Latino groups, including the most powerful one, La MA, also known as the Mexican Mafia. In jail, the group learned new lessons they could take back to the streets. Back on the streets, people from other nationalities joined the group. Fistfights were soon replaced by the use of knives, axes, and machetes. Drug dealing was viewed as profitable, while drug use was seen as self-destructive, shown by the lives of those they sold to. They eventually replaced the letter S with the number 13, a symbol of how society viewed them. evil, or outlawed. Additionally, the 13th letter of the alphabet is M, further connecting to their identity. More violence on the street led to increased hatred, resulting in a never-ending war between groups. Losing someone close often left a deep-seated hatred towards the opposition that never went away. When battles broke out between Barrio 18 and victims fell due to retaliation, this hatred could never be fixed. MS members were forbidden from speaking or writing the word 18, a restriction that became a key element in the gang's foundational identity. We owe everything to the letters. We go only as far as the letters allow us. It's more than just a gang. The letters or group will protect you, unlike the government or the other gang represented by the numbers. By dedicating yourself to the letters, your achievements become part of a greater legacy. MS-13 expanded and built a solid reputation. New members received a 13-second beating by other members and could earn stripes by attacking a member of the numbers, showcasing their loyalty to the letters. Subscribe if you want to see a video about the numbers. For now, let's continue and explore why they lived and died for the letters. There is always a boiling point when it comes to violence. In the US, it led to one thing: deportation.
The federal government has also been cracking down, deporting gang members convicted of crimes.
Yes, after changes in US laws in the mid-1990s, the door was opened for the massive deportation of ex-convicts back to their countries of origin. Over 90% of these convicts were sent to the Northern Triangle, El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras. At the same time, MS-13 spread across the United States, forming new cliques in different areas. Meanwhile, in the Northern Triangle, convicts with MS face tattoos arrived, many with families still in the US, or connections there. They wanted to return or maintained those connections. They brought that gang survival mentality back to their countries of origin, determined to continue living for the letters because no other support system cared for them. The main thought process behind MS-13 is the collective effort to work for the good of the letters. Therefore, MS-13 operates in cliques, usually depending on the area they are from. Typically, cliques work independently and their power is determined by the money they make, which reflects how much influence the leader of that clique has. Of course, the letters bind these cliques together, but it is usually the clique leaders who operate independently, functioning like a commander and his soldiers. Reputation is incredibly powerful, especially for vulnerable and troubled youths in poor areas. MS-13 was portrayed by the media as the most dangerous gang in the world, showcasing a member who was incarcerated and had MS tattoos on his face, not knowing that many members did not look like this and that for most, the letters was a support system. This portrayal added to the gang's growth. Many young people looked for the strongest gang for survival in their dangerous neighborhoods, and if this offered the best chance of survival, this would be what many disaffected youths chose. MS-13 refers to it as El Barrio, or the neighborhood. It's the space where members live and die for each other, and by representing the gang, you can contribute to the growth and safety of El Barrio. Criminal activities or deeds are sometimes necessary to protect your loved ones, in service of the community. Just as this mindset spread throughout the US, it did the same throughout the Northern Triangle. New cliques and therefore new commanders began to develop across several countries. Each clique is allowed independence, as long as it does not endanger the letters. There were basic principles for all members. No theft from gang members, no sexual assault of a member's family, which often happened in jail. no hard drugs, mostly in jail, no snitching, no leaving unless given permission, attend meetings, and internal judgment, which was court for members. Members can move up the ladder within the gang. It all depends on you and the action you take, how badly you want it. Many people were not full-time gangbangers, but individuals who attended schools, had jobs, families, and numerous obligations that they balanced with gang life. This was all because they felt safer being in the support system of the ladders than in one that did not care for them. One of the biggest sources of revenue for the gang was extortion, as MS-13 mostly operated in cliques depending on the area. Members would collect what they called la renta, or the rent. In El Salvador alone, it was rumored that the gang made close to 45 million per year. The money was spent on houses, businesses, car dealerships, and eventually gaining access to the highest social circles. In El Salvador in the early 2000s, MS-13 needed an internal reorganization. Most of the commanders were incarcerated, and the gang had grown so exponentially that the streets were in total chaos. Massive amounts of people fought for control of El Barrio and the ladders that deeply connected them. At the highest inner circles, violence could be used as a political tool. In March 2012, a gang truce was established in El Salvador between MS-13 and two factions of Barrio 18 to reduce homicides. In return, gang leaders were transferred from maximum security prisons to medium security facilities. During the truce, the homicide rate dropped by 50%, and the commanders formed the Federation, a group of 30 leaders who held business meetings to decide gang strategy. This showcased the significant impact the gang had. The truce exchanged homicides for political power, as parties realized they needed gangs to win elections. This was the ladder strategy in full effect. In later years, the former president of Honduras, Juan Hernández, who had been a key US ally during his time in office, was arrested on charges related to drug trafficking, which was connected to the Mexican Mafia and MS-13. In every history, there's always a breaking point. In late March 2022, El Salvador experienced 80 homicides in just 3 days. President Nayib Bukele declared a state of emergency, which was followed by the Mano Dura, or hard hand approach. This led to the mass arrest of suspected gang members and the construction of CECOT to house the thousands of arrested and suspected individuals. These actions transformed El Salvador from one of the most dangerous places on earth to one of the safest. Peace is not just the absence of conflict, it's a state of mind. When you see images in the media of a sentenced tattooed MS-13 member, it's important to understand that the origin of this movement came from a community that wanted to stand up for themselves. People in rough neighborhoods across several countries chose these ladders to give them a sense of peace by feeling safe. By recognizing that the roots of such movements are often grounded in a desire for security, we can understand that true peace is achieved not through violence, but by creating safe and supportive communities where everyone feels valued and protected. This is what everyone, especially young people, should look up to. Did you know about MS-13, their origin as MSS, the deportation, or the philosophy of the ladders? Leave me your answers below in the comments, and if you like our content, like and subscribe to our channel or support us on conscioushistory.backme.org. We love making these videos. See you next time at Conscious History.